Marcus left on a Thursday. Not because Thursday had any particular significance, but because Thursday was the day he finally understood that staying would destroy everyone he loved. The conversation that changed everything happened 3 days earlier in the living room of the house he'd grown up in. His father sat in the armchair by the window, the one that used to be green but had faded to something closer to gray over the years. His mother stood in the doorway to the kitchen, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. And Marcus sat on the couch, his hands folded in his lap, trying to figure out how to tell them the truth without breaking them. He had rehearsed the words 100 times. He had written them down in a journal he kept hidden under his mattress. He had practiced in front of the mirror, trying to find a tone that felt honest without feeling cruel. But now, sitting in that room with the late afternoon light filtering through the curtains, all of those rehearsals felt useless. His father spoke first. "Your mother tells me you've been skipping work," Marcus nodded. He'd been skipping work for 3 weeks. Not because he was lazy, but because the warehouse where he worked was owned by the same family that owned half the town. And that family had started asking questions Marcus didn't know how to answer. "I've been dealing with some things," Marcus said. His father leaned forward. What things? And there it was. The moment where everything could have changed. Marcus could have told them the truth. He could have said, "I borrowed money from the wrong people, a lot of money. And now they're asking me to do things I don't want to do, things that could hurt you, things that could hurt everyone." But he didn't say that. Instead, he said, "Just personal things, I'll figure it out." His mother stepped into the room. She had always been the one who could see through him, the one who could tell when he was lying just by the way he held his shoulders. "Marcus," she said, "what did you do?" He looked at her. She was 56 years old, and she looked exhausted. His father had been out of work for 8 months. They were behind on the mortgage. His younger sister was in her second year of college, and the tuition payments were bleeding them dry. Marcus had tried to help. That's how this whole thing had started. He tried to help, and in trying to help, he'd made everything worse. "Nothing," he said. "I didn't do anything." His mother didn't believe him, but she also didn't push. Because sometimes love means giving someone space to carry their own burden, even when you can see that burden crushing them. That night, Marcus lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. He thought about the men who had come to see him the week before. Men in expensive suits with calm voices and eyes that suggested they'd done terrible things and would do terrible things again, if necessary. They told him they needed a favor. A small favor, just a delivery. Just one package from one place to another. Nothing illegal, they'd said. Just a favor between friends. But Marcus knew what that favor meant. He knew that once he did it, he'd owe them. And owing them meant more favors. And more favors meant eventually doing something he couldn't undo. Something that would implicate his family. Something that would put his parents and his sister at risk. So he made a decision, not a dramatic one, not a heroic one, just the only decision that made sense. He would leave. He would disappear. And in disappearing, he would take the debt with him. If he wasn't around, they couldn't use his family as leverage. If he wasn't around, the men in suits would have to find someone else. It wasn't a solution. It was just damage control. But sometimes damage control is the best you can do. Marcus left a note. Not on the kitchen counter where his father had left his years ago that felt too cinematic, too much like a movie. He left it in his bedroom, tucked into the journal under his mattress. He knew his mother would find it eventually. She was the only one who ever came into his room to change the sheets or collect laundry. The note was short. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I got into something I couldn't get out of, and the only way to keep you safe was to leave. Please don't look for me. Please don't try to contact me. I'll be okay. I just need to make sure you're okay first. Tell Sarah I love her. Tell her to finish school. Tell her not to make the same mistakes I did. I'll come back when it's safe. I don't know when that will be. I'm sorry." He left on a Thursday morning, before anyone else was awake. He packed a single duffel bag, some clothes, a toothbrush, the cash he'd been saving for the last 6 months. Not much, maybe $3,000. enough to get him out of town and keep him alive for a few weeks while he figured out what came next. He took one last look at the house. It wasn't much. A 2-story rental on the edge of town, with peeling paint and a front porch that sagged slightly to the left. But it was home. It was the place where his mother had taught him to read. The place where his father had shown him how to fix a car engine. The place where his sister had learned to ride a bike in the driveway. He was leaving all of that behind. Not because he wanted to, but because staying meant putting all of it at risk. He drove for 6 hours before he stopped. He ended up in a small town in Nevada, the kind of place where nobody asks questions because everyone has something they're running from. He rented a motel room by the week. He paid in cash. He didn't use his real name. He got a job washing dishes at a diner. The work was mindless and exhausting, which was exactly what he needed. He didn't want to think. He didn't want to feel. He just wanted to exist in a space where the past couldn't reach him and the future didn't matter. At night, he would lie in the motel bed and think about his family. He wondered if they'd found the note yet. He wondered if they were angry or sad or relieved. He wondered if they understood why he'd left, or if they thought he was just another person who'd given up and walked away. He thought about calling them. Just once. Just to hear their voices and know they were okay. But he didn't, because calling them would give them hope. And hope would make them try to find him. And if they tried to find him, the men in suits might find them first. So he stayed silent. He let them believe whatever they needed to believe. And he carried the weight of that silence alone. 2 years passed. Marcus stopped counting days and started counting seasons. Winter bled into spring. Spring turned into summer. Summer gave way to autumn. And the cycle repeated, and with each repetition, the person he'd been before felt more and more like a stranger. He moved from the motel to a small apartment above a hardware store. He stopped washing dishes and started working construction. The work was hard 10-hour days in the heat, lifting and hammering and building things he'd never see completed. But it was honest. And honesty felt like redemption, even if nobody was keeping score. He made a few friends, not close friends. Not the kind of people you tell your secrets to, but people you could have a beer with after work. People who didn't ask where you came from or why you never talked about your family. People who understood that some things are better left unspoken. He dated a woman named Claire for 6 months. She was a waitress at the diner where he used to work. She had a 7-year-old daughter and an ex-husband who sent child support checks irregularly and regret even less frequently. She liked Marcus because he was quiet and reliable and didn't ask for much. He liked her because she didn't press him for details about his past. But the relationship ended the same way most of his relationships ended. She asked him one night while they were lying in bed, "Do you ever think about the future?" And Marcus had said, "Not really." And she'd looked at him with something like pity and said, "That's the problem, isn't it? You're not really here. You're somewhere else. And I don't think you're ever coming back." She was right. He wasn't really there. Part of him was still in that living room, sitting on the couch, trying to figure out how to save his family from a disaster he'd created. Part of him was still driving away in the early morning light, watching the house disappear in the rearview mirror. He was living, but he wasn't alive. He was surviving, but he wasn't present. He started sending money home. Not much. $100 here, $200 there. He sent it in unmarked envelopes with no return address. He mailed them from different post offices in different towns so they couldn't be traced. He didn't know if his family received them. He didn't know if they understood where the money was coming from, but he needed to do something. He needed to believe that his exile had a purpose, that his absence was protecting them in some measurable way. One night, 3 years after he'd left, he saw his sister on Facebook. He'd created a fake account, fake name, no photo, no personal information. He didn't interact with anyone. He just used it to check on the people he'd left behind. Sarah had graduated from college. She was working as a teacher now. She looked happy in her photos. She was smiling. She'd gotten engaged to a man Marcus didn't recognize. And in the caption of one photo, she'd written, "I wish my brother could be here to walk me down the aisle." I miss you every day, Marcus. Wherever you are, I hope you're okay. Marcus closed the laptop. He sat in the dark for a long time. He thought about going back, about showing up at her wedding, about explaining why he'd left. But he didn't, because going back meant bringing the past with him. And the past wasn't safe. Not yet, maybe not ever. 5 years after Marcus disappeared, the truth found him anyway. Not in the dramatic way he'd been expecting, no men in suits showing up at his door, no threats or violence. Just a phone call from a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Is this Marcus? The voice was unfamiliar. Male, middle-aged. Who's asking? My name is Detective Ramirez. I'm with the police department in your hometown. I've been trying to reach you for a while. Marcus's stomach dropped. Why? I need to ask you some questions about a case we've been working on. It's related to the people you borrowed money from before you left town. They've been arrested. We're building a case, and we think you might have information that could help. Marcus didn't say anything. His mind was racing. Mr. Davis, you're not in trouble. We know you were a victim in this situation. We just need you to come in and give a statement. It would help us put these people away for a long time. I can't come in, Marcus said. Why not? Because I left for a reason. And if I come back, it puts my family at risk. The detective sighed. Mr. Davis, these people are in custody. They can't hurt you or your family anymore. And if you testify, you'll be helping to make sure they stay locked up. You'll be protecting other people from going through what you went through. Marcus thought about that. He thought about the other people in his town who might be dealing with the same men, facing the same impossible choices. He thought about the families who might be torn apart the way his had been. If I come back, Marcus said, will my family know? That's up to you, the detective said. But I think they'd want to see you. Marcus hung up the phone. He sat in his apartment for 2 days, trying to decide what to do. On the third day, he packed his bag. He drove back to his hometown. It looked the same. Smaller, maybe, or maybe he was just older. He went to the police station. He gave his statement. It took 4 hours. He told them everything, the loan, the threats, the favor they'd wanted him to do. He told them about the night he'd left and the years he'd spent in exile. When he was done, the detective shook his hand. You did the right thing, he said. Marcus didn't feel like he'd done the right thing. He felt tired. He went to his parents' house. He stood on the front porch for 5 minutes before he knocked. His mother answered the door. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she pulled him into a hug. She didn't say anything. She just held him. His father came to the door. He looked older, grayer. He shook Marcus's hand. You're home, he said. Marcus nodded. I'm home. His sister drove over an hour later. She walked in the door and punched him in the arm. Hard. That's for leaving, she said. Then she hugged him. And that's for coming back. Marcus stayed in town for 3 weeks. He helped his father fix the porch. He went to dinner with his sister and her fiancé. He sat in the kitchen with his mother and drank coffee and tried to explain why he'd left. I thought if I stayed, they'd use you against me, he said. I thought leaving was the only way to protect you. His mother looked at him. We didn't need protecting, Marcus. We needed you. He didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right. His exile had protected them from a danger that might never have materialized. But it had also deprived them of 5 years. 5 years of birthdays and holidays and ordinary moments. 5 years they couldn't get back. He went to his sister's wedding. He didn't walk her down the aisle that honor went to their father. But he sat in the front row, and he watched her get married, and he cried. After the ceremony, she found him. I'm glad you came back, she said. I'm sorry it took so long, he said. Are you going to stay? He thought about that question. He thought about the apartment in Nevada. He thought about the construction job and the friends who didn't ask questions. He thought about the life he'd built in exile, a life that was safe and small and lonely. I don't know, he said. I think I'm still figuring that out. She nodded. Just don't disappear again, okay? Okay. He left town 2 days later. Not because he wanted to. But because he still didn't know how to live in a place where people knew who he used to be, he went back to Nevada. He went back to his job. He went back to his small apartment above the hardware store. But something was different now. He wasn't running anymore. He was just somewhere else, waiting for the day when he'd be ready to go home for good. That day came 2 years later. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because he woke up one morning and realized that exile wasn't protecting anyone anymore. It was just punishing him. He packed his things. He drove back home. He moved into a small house on the edge of town. He got a job working construction with his father. He started dating someone. He went to family dinners on Sundays. He became slowly the person he might have been if he'd never left. But he never forgot the cost. He never forgot the 5 years he'd spent alone. He never forgot the way his mother had looked at him when he'd come back. The mixture of relief and anger and something that looked like grief, because exile leaves a mark. Even when you come home, even when you're forgiven, there's a part of you that stays in that motel room in Nevada, lying awake at night, wondering if you made the right choice, wondering if the people you left behind are better off without you, wondering if coming back will just bring the danger with you. Marcus knew the answer now. The danger had always been an illusion. The real cost had been the time. And time, once lost, can never be recovered. It can only be mourned.